Poor twins. Whisper to sleeping patient, millionaire hears, Daddy, we found you. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air as consciousness slowly returned to Marcus Whitfield. The steady beep of monitors echoed in the private room of Chicago Memorial Hospital, where the 45-year-old real estate mogul had been recovering from a severe car accident for the past 3 days. His Bentley had collided with a delivery truck during a rainstorm on Lakeshore Drive, leaving him with a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured arm. The autumn rain continued to patter against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his luxury suite, casting dancing shadows across the pristine white walls. Marcus stirred slightly, his expensive silk pajamas rustling against the hospital sheets as fragments of consciousness began to piece themselves together. That's when he heard them, 2 small voices, barely above a whisper. "Is that really him? Emma?" came the first voice, trembling with uncertainty. "I think so, Ethan. Look at his face. It's just like in Mama's picture," replied another voice, equally soft but filled with cautious hope. Marcus's eyes remained closed, but his heart began to race. Through the fog of his medication, he could make out the sound of small footsteps shuffling closer to his bed. The voices were those of children, young children. "Daddy?" whispered one of them, the word hanging in the air like a prayer. "Daddy, we found you." Marcus's eyes snapped open, his breath catching in his throat. Standing at the foot of his hospital bed were 2 children who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. A boy and a girl, unmistakably twins, with strawberry blonde hair that caught the dim afternoon light filtering through the rain-streaked windows. Their clothes were clean but obviously second-hand. The boy wore a faded Superman t-shirt that was slightly too big, while the girl clutched a worn doll in a patched-up dress that had seen better days. Who are you?" Marcus managed to croak, his voice hoarse from days of unconsciousness. The twins exchanged glances, their blue eyes, so startlingly similar to his own, filled with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. The girl Emma stepped forward slightly, her small hand reaching into a tattered backpack. "We're Emma and Ethan Morrison," she said, her voice barely audible. "Our mama was Sarah Morrison, and she told us about you before she went to heaven." Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. Sarah Morrison. The name hit him like a physical blow, dragging him back 23 years to a time when he was a struggling college student working 2 jobs to pay for business school. Sarah had been a waitress at the diner where he'd grab coffee between his night shifts at the warehouse and his morning classes. Beautiful, kind Sarah with her infectious laugh and dreams of becoming a teacher. That's impossible," Marcus whispered, though even as the words left his lips, he could see the undeniable resemblance. The shape of their faces, the stubborn set of their chins, the way they both tilted their heads slightly when they were thinking. It was like looking at ghosts of his younger self. Emma's small fingers trembled as she pulled out a faded photograph, its edges worn soft from years of handling. She held it up with both hands, and Marcus felt his breath catch. There he was, 22 years old, arm wrapped around Sarah as they stood in front of Navy Pier. They were both laughing at something off camera, young and in love, and completely oblivious to how complicated life was about to become. "Mama kept this picture on her nightstand," Ethan said, speaking for the first time. His voice was higher than his sister's, but carried the same note of careful hope. "She told us stories about our daddy, who lived in a big city and built tall buildings. She said maybe someday we'd find you." Marcus's mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing and hearing. Sarah had been pregnant when they'd broken up. He remembered that much. But she'd told him she'd lost the baby, that the stress of their relationship ending had caused a miscarriage. The grief had been devastating for both of them, and it had seemed easier to make a clean break. He'd thrown himself into his studies and work, eventually building the real estate empire that had made him one of Chicago's wealthiest men. "Where is your mother now?" Marcus asked, though something in the children's eyes already told him the answer. "She got sick," Emma said simply, her voice catching slightly. "The cancer came back last month. Before she went to the hospital the last time, she gave us this picture and told us your name. She said if anything happened to her, we should try to find Marcus Whitfield in Chicago." "We've been looking for 3 weeks," Ethan added, his small frame straightening with pride. "Mrs. Patterson from the children's home drove us to the city, but she said we only had 1 day to try. We went to your office building, but the security man wouldn't let us up. We tried to call, but they said you were in the hospital." Marcus stared at these 2 small people who claimed to be his children he'd never known existed. The rational part of his mind, the part that had built a business empire through careful calculation and risk assessment, demanded proof. But looking into their faces, seeing Sarah's gentle smile reflected in Emma's features and his own stubborn determination in Ethan's posture, he felt something crack open in his chest that had been sealed shut for decades. "How did you get in here?" he asked, his voice softer now. "We snuck in," Emma admitted, looking down at her worn sneakers. "We followed a lady with flowers and just walked really quiet. We've been coming for 2 days, but you were always sleeping. We brought you this," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, crudely wrapped package. "Emma made it." With shaking hands, Marcus unwrapped the gift. Inside was a drawing, clearly made by a child's hand, showing 3 stick figures standing in front of a tall building. The tallest figure wore a tie and had yellow hair like his own. The 2 smaller figures held hands with the tall one, and above them, Emma had written in careful block letters, "Our family." Marcus felt tears burn his eyes, tears he hadn't shed in years. The drawing was simple, innocent, and completely devastating in its hopeful certainty. "The nurses are going to notice you're here soon," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Where are you supposed to be?" "Mrs. Patterson thinks we're at the library," Emma said. "We have to be back at the children's home by 6 o'clock or she'll worry." The children's home. The words hit Marcus like another punch to the gut. These children, his children, were living in foster care, bouncing between temporary homes, while he slept in silk pajamas in a hospital suite that cost more per night than most people made in a month. "Listen to me," Marcus said, struggling to sit up despite the pain in his ribs. "I need you both to be very brave for me, okay? This is a lot to understand all at once. But I want you to know that if what you're telling me is true, if you really are my children, then everything is going to change. Does that mean you want us?" Ethan asked, his voice so small and hopeful that it nearly broke Marcus's heart. Before Marcus could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Emma and Ethan immediately tensed, their eyes darting toward the door. Like deer ready to bolt. "Hide," Marcus whispered urgently. "Behind that chair. Don't make any noise." The twins scrambled to hide just as Dr. Patricia Chen, Marcus's attending physician, entered the room with her usual brisk efficiency. She was followed by James Morrison, Marcus's longtime assistant and right-hand man, a coincidence of names that now seemed loaded with significance. "Good, you're awake," Dr. Chen said, checking his chart. "How are you feeling? Any dizziness? Nausea?" "I'm fine," Marcus said, his eyes flicking toward the chair where the twins were hidden. "Actually, I'm feeling much better. When can I be discharged?" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Dr. Chen replied, shining a small flashlight into his eyes. "You suffered a significant concussion. I'd like to keep you for observation for at least another day or 2. James stepped forward, his tablet already in hand. "Marcus, we need to discuss the Henderson acquisition. The board meeting has been moved to Thursday, and there are several contracts that need your signature. Also, your insurance company has been calling about the accident report." Marcus nodded absently, his mind still reeling from the encounter with Emma and Ethan. James, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find out everything you can about a woman named Sarah Morrison. She would have lived in the Chicago area, probably died recently. She had twin children. James looked puzzled but made a note on his tablet. Of course, any particular reason. Just do it, please, and be discreet. After Dr. Chen finished her examination and left with James, Marcus waited several minutes before calling softly, "It's safe now." The twins emerged from behind the chair, their faces flushed with the excitement of their successful hiding. Emma still clutched her worn doll, while Ethan had somehow acquired a small packet of graham crackers from the hidden vending area. "We should probably go," Emma said reluctantly. "Mrs. Patterson will be mad if we're late again." "Wait," Marcus said, reaching for the notepad on his bedside table. His handwriting was shaky due to his injured arm, but he managed to scrawl down his personal cell phone number. "I want you to have this. If you ever need anything at all, you call me, okay?" Emma took the paper with the same reverence. She might have shown a precious treasure. "Does this mean you believe us?" Marcus looked at these two brave, beautiful children who had somehow found the courage to search for a father they'd never met, armed with nothing but a faded photograph and their mother's stories. He thought of Sarah, dying alone while trying to give her children hope. He thought of all the years he'd spent building walls around his heart, convincing himself that solitude was strength. "I believe you," he said simply, "and I promise you this, we're going to figure this out together. But right now, I need you to be safe. Go back to Mrs. Patterson, go to school, be good kids. Can you do that for me?" Both children nodded solemnly, as if he'd entrusted them with a sacred mission. "Will we see you again?" Ethan asked. "Yes," Marcus said, and he was surprised by how much he meant it. "Very soon." As the twins prepared to leave, Emma turned back one more time. "Mr. Whitfield, our mama used to say that when you love someone, you find a way to be together. She said love always finds a way." And with those words hanging in the air like a benediction, Emma and Ethan Morrison slipped out of the hospital room as quietly as they'd entered, leaving Marcus alone with the photograph, the childish drawing, and the sudden, overwhelming realization that his carefully ordered life was about to change forever. Outside, the rain continued to fall on Chicago, washing the city clean and preparing it for whatever was to come. 3 days later, Marcus sat in his penthouse office on the 40th floor of the Whitfield Tower, staring out at Lake Michigan while James spread documents across his mahogany desk. The late October sun cast long shadows across the room, but Marcus barely noticed. Since being discharged from the hospital that morning, he'd been unable to concentrate on anything except the memory of two small voices whispering, "Daddy, we found you." "I found her," James said quietly, his usual efficient demeanor tempered by unusual gentleness. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, age 41, died of pancreatic cancer on October 3rd at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She was a third-grade teacher at Lincoln Elementary School in Evanston. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of that information settle over him like a heavy blanket. And the children, Emma Rose and Ethan Michael Morrison, born March 15th, 8 years old. They've been in the care of Sunshine Children's Home since their mother's death. According to the records, Sarah never listed a father on their birth certificates. James paused, clearly uncomfortable with the next part. "Marcus, I also found this." He slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside were copies of medical records, school documents, and several more photographs. Marcus's hands trembled slightly. As he examined them, there was Sarah, older but still beautiful, holding two infants at what appeared to be a hospital. Another photo showed the twins on their first day of school, gap-toothed grins bright with excitement. A third captured them at what looked like a school play, Emma dressed as a flower while Ethan wore a paper crown. But it was the final document that made Marcus's breath catch. A letter addressed to him, but never sent. written in Sarah's familiar handwriting. The envelope was postmarked but never mailed, found among her personal effects. With shaking hands, Marcus unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dearest Marcus, I don't even know if I'll ever send this letter, but I need to write it. Emma and Ethan are asleep in the next room. They're 6 now, and they ask about their daddy every single day. I've run out of stories to tell them about why he's not here. I lied to you, Marcus. I lied when I told you I lost the baby. I was pregnant with twins and I was so scared. You were working so hard to build your future, and I didn't want to be the thing that held you back. You had such big dreams, and I was just a waitress who barely graduated high school. I convinced myself that you'd be better off without us dragging you down, but now I'm sick and the doctors aren't sure how much time I have left. I can't stop thinking about how I robbed you of 8 years with your children, and I robbed them of having their father. Emma has your stubborn streak and your head for numbers. Ethan has your protective instincts and the way you used to hum when you thought no one was listening. They're such good kids, Marcus. They're smart and kind and brave, and they deserve so much better than what I can give them. If something happens to me, they'll have no one. I keep their pictures on my nightstand next to that old photo of us at Navy Pier, and sometimes I catch them staring at it like they're trying to memorize your face. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for keeping them from you. I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness, but if you're reading this, it means I found the courage to finally tell you the truth, or it means I'm gone and someone else is telling you for me. All I know is that Emma and Ethan are the best thing I ever did with my life, and they're half yours. They're your legacy too, Marcus. Please don't let my mistakes rob them of their father any longer. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Sarah." Marcus set the letter down with hands that shook so badly he could barely hold the paper. James sat quietly across from him, giving him space to process the magnitude of what he'd just learned. "There's more," James said gently. "I spoke with Mrs. Patterson at the children's home. Apparently Emma and Ethan have been difficult to place. They refuse to be separated, and most families aren't interested in taking both children. They've been in 3 different foster homes in the past month, and they keep running away to look for you." "Running away?" Marcus's voice was sharp with concern. "Yesterday they walked 12 miles from their current placement back to the children's home. They told Mrs. Patterson they needed to use the computer to find your hospital room number." James paused. "Marcus, these kids are determined to find their father. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Marcus could answer, his secretary's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Whitfield, there's Mrs. Patterson here to see you. She says it's about Emma and Ethan Morrison." Marcus and James exchanged glances. "Send her in," Marcus said. Mrs. Patricia Patterson was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. She carried herself with the no-nonsense air of someone who'd spent decades caring for children in difficult circumstances. She looked around Marcus's opulent office with obvious discomfort before settling her gaze on him. "Mr. Whitfield, I'll get straight to the point. Emma and Ethan Morrison have been telling everyone who'll listen that they found their father in the hospital. They've been carrying around your phone number like it's a winning lottery ticket." She set her purse on the chair beside her. "Now, I've heard a lot of stories from children in my time, but these two, they're different. They're not looking for attention or trying to run away from their situation. They genuinely believe you're their father." Marcus stood and walked to the window, his back to Mrs. Patterson. "What if they're right? Then we have a problem, Mr. Whitfield. These children have been through tremendous trauma. They lost the only parent they ever knew. They've been bounced between homes, and now they're clinging to this hope that you'll rescue them. If you're not serious about this, if you're just curious or feeling guilty, then I need to know now so I can help them move on." Marcus turned back to face her, and she was struck by the raw pain in his eyes. Mrs. Patterson, 23 years ago, I was in love with a woman named Sarah Morrison. We broke up when she told me she'd lost our baby. 3 days ago, I woke up in a hospital room to find 2 children whispering that they'd found their daddy. Today, I learned that Sarah lied to me to protect my future and that those children are mine. Mrs. Patterson's stern expression softened slightly. And what do you intend to do with that information? I want to take a paternity test. I want to know for certain, and if they're mine. Marcus paused, the weight of the decision settling over him. If they're mine, I want them home where they belong. Mr. Whitfield, with all due respect, you're a bachelor millionaire who's never raised children. Emma and Ethan aren't accessories you can acquire. They're traumatized kids who need stability, love, and patience. They need a father, not a benefactor. Marcus sat back down, suddenly feeling the full weight of his 45 years. I know that. But Mrs. Patterson, for 23 years, I've been building this empire, convincing myself that success meant being alone at the top. I've got more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but I eat dinner alone every night. I haven't had a real relationship in years because I was convinced that caring about people just led to pain. He picked up the drawing Emma had made, smoothing out a wrinkled corner. These children walked 12 miles to find me. They snuck into a hospital and sat by my bedside for 2 days waiting for me to wake up. They're not looking for money or an easy life. They're looking for love. And maybe I am too. Mrs. Patterson studied him for a long moment. Those children have been disappointed by every adult in their lives except their mother. If you do this, if you open that door, you can't change your mind when it gets difficult. And it will get difficult, Mr. Whitfield. Parenting always is. I understand. Do you? Do you understand that Emma has nightmares about losing people she loves? That Ethan hasn't spoken more than a few words to any of his foster families because he's afraid they'll disappear like his mother did? These aren't happy, well-adjusted children, Mr. Whitfield. They're survivors. Marcus felt his chest tighten with a combination of grief and determination. Then they're stronger than I ever was at their age. Mrs. Patterson, I can't undo the years I lost with them, but I can try to be the father they need from now on. Will you help me? Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small photo album. Sarah gave this to me before she died. She said if anyone ever came looking for Emma and Ethan, they should see what kind of mother she was. Marcus opened the album with reverent hands. Page after page showed Sarah and the twins at birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school events, quiet moments at home. In every picture, the love between them was palpable. Sarah might not have had much money, but she'd given her children something far more valuable. She loved them fiercely, Mrs. Patterson said softly. And she loved you too, Mr. Whitfield. She used to tell me stories about their father, how brilliant he was, how hard he worked, how he used to bring her coffee with extra cream and no sugar. She never spoke about you with bitterness, only with sadness for what might have been. Marcus closed the album, his vision blurred with unshed tears. What do I need to do? First, the paternity test. I can arrange that through the state. Second, if the results confirm what we all suspect, you'll need to go through the proper legal channels for custody. It won't be quick. There are procedures, evaluations, home studies. Third, and most importantly, you need to start building a relationship with Emma and Ethan that's based on more than just DNA. How do I do that? Mrs. Patterson smiled for the first time since entering his office. You start by showing up. Every day, you learn their favorite foods, their fears, their dreams. You read them bedtime stories and help with homework and kiss. Scraped knees. You become their father, not because genetics say you are, but because you choose to be. Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in decades. When can I see them again? They're at school right now, Lincoln Elementary, the same school where their mother taught. I could arrange for you to pick them up this afternoon, if you'd like. But Mr. Whitfield, when you see them, you need to be honest about the process. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep. I understand. As Mrs. Patterson prepared to leave, she turned back one more time. Mr. Whitfield, those children have been through more loss than any child should have to bear. If you do this, if you become their father, you're not just changing their lives, you're saving them, but they'll change you too. Are you ready for that? Marcus looked out at the city he'd conquered, at the empire he'd built, from nothing but ambition and determination. It all seemed so small now compared to the enormous, terrifying, wonderful possibility of becoming a father to 2 children who had never stopped believing in him. "I'm ready," he said. That afternoon, Marcus stood outside Lincoln Elementary School, his heart pounding harder than it had during any business negotiation. He'd trade his usual expensive suit for jeans and a simple sweater, trying to look more like a father and less like a corporate mogul. When the school bell rang and children began streaming out, he spotted them immediately. Emma and Ethan walked hand in hand, their backpacks nearly as big as they were. They moved with the careful wariness of children who'd learned not to expect too much from the adults in their lives. Then Emma saw him. Her face lit up like a sunrise, and she dropped Ethan's hand to run toward him, her backpack bouncing behind her. "You came!" she shouted, throwing her small arms around his waist with a force that nearly knocked him over. Ethan followed more cautiously, but his smile was just as bright. "Did you come to take us home?" he asked. Marcus knelt down so he was at their eye level, his hands gentle on their shoulders. "I came because I want to get to know you both better. And yes, if you want me to be your daddy, we're going to make that happen. But it's going to take some time, and we need to do it the right way." "How long?" Emma asked. "I don't know yet, but I promise you this, I'm not going anywhere. Every day we're going to spend time together. Every day we're going to get to know each other better, and every day we're going to be a little more like a real family." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wrote you a letter," he said shyly. Marcus unfolded it carefully. In shaky 8-year-old handwriting, Ethan had written, "Dear Daddy, Emma and me are good kids. We won't have any trouble. We just want a family. Love, Ethan and Emma." As Marcus read those simple, heartbreaking words, he felt the last walls around his heart finally crumble completely. These children weren't asking for wealth or luxury or any of the things his money could buy. They were asking for the one thing. He'd convinced himself he didn't need love. "You know what?" Marcus said, pulling both children into a gentle hug. "I think we're going to be just fine." As the 3 of them walked toward his car, Emma slipped her small hand into his large one. "Daddy," she said softly. "Yes?" "Mama used to say that sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them. She said that's how love works." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, thinking of Sarah and the sacrifice she'd made, thinking of the 23 years he'd spent building an empire while his children grew up without him, thinking of the uncertain but hopeful future that stretched ahead of them. "Your mama was very wise," he said, "and I think she would be very proud of how brave you both are." As they drove through the Chicago streets toward an uncertain but hopeful future, Marcus realized that for the first time in decades, he wasn't alone at the top of his tower. He had a family, imperfect, complicated, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. The autumn sun was setting over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Marcus Whitfield was finally, truly coming home. The End. This story explores themes of redemption, the healing power of love, and the courage it takes to open our hearts to unexpected family. Set against the backdrop of Chicago's urban landscape, it follows the journey of a successful but lonely businessman, who discovers that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we share with those who matter most. Through realistic dialogue, authentic character development, and culturally specific details about American family dynamics and the foster care system, the narrative demonstrates how love can bridge any gap, whether it's created by time, circumstance, or our own fears. Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.